Hello, everyone. My name is Arianna Freels. I am creator and editor-in-chief of Brown Orchid Magazine, a media company, a magazine dedicated for the modern Black woman. And today I have the honor of interviewing a registered dietitian and founder of Alexis Brooks Nutrition, Miss Alexis Brooks. Thank you for being part of the garden, Miss Brooks. How are
Thank
you
you.
today?
I'm doing well. I'm feeling good today.
All right, perfect. Just tell us a little bit about how you got into your field and what really made you dedicated to women's health.
Okay, so actually, I knew I wanted to be a dietitian when I was in high school. So about 15 is when I was like, I want to focus on nutrition and wellness, and ended up going to school and becoming a dietitian. Got my master's in nutrition, and I've been working as a dietitian for about 12 years now. But at about maybe about the 8 year mark, fast forward, or I guess to rewind a little bit, I always knew I wanted to have a private practice. So even when I was 15, my vision of like what it would be like to be a dietitian is to own my own private practice. And I just wanted to be able to share information with people about how they could be healthy and the power of food, basically, for prevention and all those things. That was like my initial vision of being a dietitian. But
Right.
it took many, many years for me to actually decide to finally branch out and do my private practice. But in 2020, I was diagnosed, or 2021, I was diagnosed with endometriosis. But in
Wow.
2020 is when things like really came to a head where I knew something was seriously wrong. And during that time, I started doing a lot of research in women's health, learning a lot more about endometriosis, fibroids, PCOS, and other conditions that affect women and hormones and all those things. And it was in 2022 is when I decided to quit my corporate job, start my private practice, and specialize in women's health.
All right. And well, it sounds like you were destined to be in the position that you are now. And honestly, thank you for advocating for women's health, especially reproductive health. Um, but since you've been in this field for such a long time, what are the biggest myths that you've seen about reproductive health that you want to just like debunk?
Ooh. The biggest myth, one that just came to mind as you're saying that, is that it's only something that affects women.
Mm,
So reproductive issue is actually, I look at it as like a social justice issue. It's an issue that
yes,
affects everyone because everyone came from a woman.
yes,
Um, and what affects one person or one group actually impacts the whole population. It's a domino effect. And even though there are certain conditions that like maybe physically affect a woman, it still can affect the people that live with them, the people that work with them. It affects everybody. So I think that's the biggest myth is that people are like, oh, that's a women's problem, and they
yeah.
just do that and that's their thing.
It's like a domino effect, honestly. So it's not just, like you said, it's
Mhm.
not just deals with us, it deals with everyone else. And it's funny that you mentioned that it's a social justice issue too, because, I want to say that we are United States based for people who are watching, listening, and there is so much going on in this country. And I want to talk back about our hormonal health, that stress is such a big thing when it comes to our bodies. It comes to self-regulation. What are some tips for maybe someone going through a really difficult time in their life? And how can we just take a step back and just manage our hormones?
Mhm. Yeah, so to piggyback what you just said on self-regulation, one of the most powerful things that we could do that is free and we could do it anywhere is to breathe, is to focus on our breath. And a lot of times, because it's a function that happens naturally, normally we don't have to think about it necessarily. But because of that, a lot of us tend to have really shallow breathing where we're breathing from our chest. But it's
Mm,
really important that we're breathing from our diaphragm, from our belly on up. And this is something that can directly impact your hormones because when we have that shallow breathing, that quick breathing, when we're stressed out, whether it be because we're in traffic or we're at work, we had an argument with someone, or there's something, a looming deadline, or whatever the thing is, it actually increases our cortisol, and that is
Mm.
a hormone.
Yes.
When cortisol is all over the place, when it's really high, it impacts other hormones, including your sex hormones like
Mm.
progesterone, for example, estrogen. It impacts insulin, it impacts your blood sugars, it impacts your energy and your sleep. So, just like bringing it back to that one piece, if we were able to focus on our breath more often, that can actually begin to start to help to balance our hormones.
All right. And that's such because we do so much in a day that I feel like it goes right over our head that we could be dealing with so many stressors, but it really, our body is one big machine and we need to take a break. So thank you for saying that. So also, I want to pivot to what are some things that we do as women that affects our endocrine system that you want to just point out that we should maybe unconsciously do?
Skipping meals. A lot of
Uh,
women skip meals, particularly
I'm guilty.
breakfast. A lot of women that see, look, I already knew. I knew somebody. You were someone who's listening.
Yes,
Uh, Common, right? Like we might be because we're in a rush, or sometimes just because we don't have an appetite in the morning, or maybe we don't think it's important. We're just like, oh, I'll just get to it when once I'm hungry later, or when
right.
lunchtime comes. But when you skip your breakfast, it actually can create a roller coaster
Mm,
of hormones, really, because again, the cortisol I was mentioning, that's it is a stress hormone, but when your blood sugars are not in check, it also increases. So if you're skipping a meal, your blood sugars will get lower because you're not giving it anything to break down
right.
into sugar. And cortisol is going to spike up because cortisol helps to bring our blood sugars up. So now your cortisol is up.
Mm,
And maybe your stress too is maybe your cortisol is doubly up. And so you're already starting your day off with
hi.
like a bit of a rebound, exactly. And so
Mm,
then your insulin have to pop up because it wants to bring your blood sugars down. And so it can create a situation to where your insulin is high, your cortisol is high, and then now you're super hungry later. And if you're really hungry, you may not choose the best options because at that point you might feel like you're too hungry to necessarily think straight
right.
about what the make good decisions.
And it's so funny because a lot of us, we just like maybe food is not on our brain or we just wake up not hungry. But that just a little thing of not having something to eat puts our body into like a frenzy panic mode, and that's not good. So everyone listening, please, even if you're not hungry, get it maybe is it a granola bar, fruit?
Ideally, you would have a little bit of carb, a little bit of protein. So, I mean, actually, ideally, you would have 30 grams of protein. But if you're
Um,
someone who doesn't really have much of an appetite, you could have something smaller. Maybe it's a piece of fruit with a little bit of yogurt, or maybe some cheese, or maybe you have an apple with some nut butter, or something like a piece of fruit with some nuts, or something like that. So it could be small too, especially just to start off with.
okay. And actually, gives me right into my next question about gut health. So, I don't think a lot of people realize that our gut health is directly linked to our overall health. So, what we're eating really affects how we feel and everything. So, if I was at a grocery store, what are the key foods I should be trying to implement so I could reverse or have better gut health?
Oh, that's a great question. So whole foods, eating real food
Oh, yes.
that are ultra processed because basically our gut is made up of like trillions of bacteria, right?
Right.
And the bacteria comes from the food that we eat. So if we're eating so basically like the fibers of what we're eating. So plants really help to seed the gut to give us the bacteria, the good bacteria that we need. Not that you have to become plant-based, but you do, it's really important that you have a diet that is high in plants. So that means having a wide variety of fruits and vegetables. These can be fresh.
Okay.
They can be frozen as well too. There's no discrimination on fresh or
Right,
frozen.
right.
So yeah, any kind of like fruits or vegetables, nuts and seeds are great. If you tolerate yogurt, that's a great one too because it has probiotics, so it will
Ooh.
help to feed the gut with bacteria too, or other fermented foods too, like kimchi, sauerkraut. Those are some options. But yeah, having a variety of plants and try to get different colors.
All right. Oh, a colorful diet. Back when we were little kids, I love it.
Yes.
Also, okay, I will have to say this, and I talked about it in the interview, in our article interview as well. I love these gut healthy sodas and like I'm talking about, Poppy, Olipop, I'm sure there's more, but they advertise or even like the little green smoothies or like the green powders that,
Hmm.
they're supposed to benefit our gut health. Now, what are some things that like obviously there's advertising, right? Marketing. Um,
Hmm.
do they even do anything? Is it even a fiber or apple cider vinegar to even impact our hormonal or gut health? What would you recommend? Should we stay away from it, or is it a good source maybe?
Yeah, I wouldn't say any of those are good sources because they're not necessarily high enough. They're not
Mm,
high enough in the probiotics to really make it an impact. Like if you really look at how much is actually in there, it's pretty low. It's going to be way lower than definitely than a probiotic would be,
yeah.
and it doesn't have like multiple strains either. So I wouldn't necessarily drink it and be like, oh, I'm doing a really great thing, because it's
Yeah,
probably not enough. It's not
that
significant.
potent enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Um, Now, are they like terrible for you? No, I wouldn't say they're terrible for your gut. They're I would also say I would recommend against having them every day
Oh,
because if you notice they do have sugar in them too,
yes.
which they do need to have sugar in them to for the that bacteria to survive and feed upon too. So there is sugar in them. And generally speaking, we want to limit how much sugar we're having, especially like added sugars from beverages, foods as well. So sure, if you like the taste of it, and that can be something that you have every so often, but don't rely on it as your gut support. Yeah.
Good to note that. Remember, there's soda and it still has sugar in it. Everyone still has sugar, it's still soda.
Hmm.
So I'm going to talk about Miss Flow, or sometimes we call it the period fairy. So a lot of women, either they have a conditions like endo or PCOS, but there are also, some symptoms of maybe some of us are having heavier periods, really bad cramping, like I can't get out of bed. So what are a culprits of a bad period or something that actually needs like I shouldn't be putting this off anymore? Some symptoms or signs.
So some culprits of a bad period or a period that is like heavy, it's painful, it's irregular, maybe it's missing, those sorts of things. A lot of it comes also there's several causes, not just one. One could be hormonal imbalances. So whether like your sex hormones could be off and other hormones too, even like your thyroid hormone can cause an issue with heavy bleeding or even like irregular periods. It could be a nutrient deficiency, which could
Mm,
a nutrient deficiency can also create a hormonal imbalance. So if you're not eating enough calories or if you're not eating specific enough of like certain minerals like zinc or iron, magnesium, so deficiency is common. If you have a gut issue, poor gut health lends to bad periods too, because it creates more inflammation and also it affects how your hormones are able to break down and metabolize. Um, I think there's inflammation is another one that's like a really big cause of heavy bleeding and also cramping. So if you're having and inflammation can come from a lot of areas, whether it be our diet or it be stress or not sleeping well, or it could be
mm,
an environmental thing going on where maybe there's contaminants or something like that, some toxic exposure. So inflammation is a big category in itself. But those are like four big areas that can
yes.
cause bad periods. And I would say some telltale signs that you have that you need to speak up. Basically, you should not be just like suffering through it is for one, if you feel like you're suffering.
Mm,
Uh, Also, if you're not unable to do regular activities, if you have to cancel something, if it causes a disruption, if you can't do normal tasks, when you're on your period, even on day one, you should be able to do everything that you normally could do. It shouldn't be something that keeps you in bed. It shouldn't be something that
to hinder you.
exactly, yeah. So
Mm.
if that is ever an issue because the pain, the heavy bleeding or anything else, you have to speak to someone about it and keep advocating until you get the care that you deserve.
Yes. And I also, this is a perfect segue into another question of mine, is especially as Black women, I think often we're not seen by medical professionals, or we ourselves push our, health concerns to the side. What are some things that maybe you've seen with other Black female patients that, hey, like this is not normal, or what are some things that you've seen among patients like us?
Ooh. I would say something that comes to mind is actually a patient I had who ended up having PMDD.
Oh my God.
She like half of the month she was feeling like very depressed, anxious, irritable, wanting to
Mm.
self-isolate. And she went through that
Wow.
for years and thought it was normal until like I
Wow.
spoke to her about it and like at first she kind of actually dismissed it even when she was telling me about it. I was like, okay, like I thought it was maybe a few days before her period or maybe a week, which is like,
Yeah,
PMS, right?
PMS. Hmm.
But even PMS is not normal. It's very common, but we shouldn't have
Oh,
PMS here.
okay.
Those are signs of like hormonal imbalances as well. But I was thinking it was something like PMS, but as she was talking about, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're miserable half of the year, half of your
That is
menstruating
not, and I
cycle.
think I want to mention the whole PMS thing as well because I get, in my feelings, or I get a little more moodier than usual around that time in the month.
Yes.
But thank you for shedding light. Like that is also not, I guess a normal symptom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's definitely so we have different phases of our menstrual cycle. So it is normal for us to maybe feel like we want to kind of be more in ourselves like a few days
Mhm.
before our period. So we don't want to socialize as much. Um, yes, it does affect our mood too. Like those things are normal,
Okay.
but a lot of times when PMS is like these mood swings that could be really erratic or
Mm,
like a tender breast or the bloating, like those are more like I would say PMS symptoms, but there are something that's more mild would be like I would say normal luteal phase
okay.
changes right before
So
our
if it's
period.
like a typical behavior that like maybe it's just slightly like I'm like slightly in my feelings, like this is probably not a concern. But if it's like a swift, like, very like you said, like erratic, that's a concern.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, and also I want to talk about as Black women, we are typically deficient in some type of either like a low vitamin D or a low iron. I know for me it's both, unfortunately. But what are some tips, especially for Black women, to incorporate for hormonal balance so we can get our levels up, maybe?
Yeah, well, first of all, make sure you're testing, make sure you're getting regular testing.
Hmm.
Vitamin D, well, actually, both of them really can fluctuate quite a bit. But you're right, those are two really commonly deficient hormones that we're deficient in.
Hmm.
Um, or actually, not hormones, nutrients.
Yes, yes.
Vitamin D is actually a hormone, but that's another story. But um, vitamin D, there's not a whole lot of food sources. So
Mm,
that's one thing that can make it tricky. Another thing is being Black, we do have less exposure from we're not able to convert as well vitamin D from the sun as people
hmm.
with less melanin. And so sometimes people will be like, well, just go in the sun more, but it's like, well, yeah, but it's
Yeah.
there's going to be a block there. So a lot of it, I would say, for vitamin D is supplementation. And it's really important that you do know your levels of vitamin, like your vitamin D levels, because your level will depend on what the supplementation is. So there's
Mm,
maintenance doses of vitamin D, which would just be a dose that like keeps you where you're at basically. So once you hit a level and you're good, you're just maintaining. But if you're really low, you may need a really high dose of it for a period of time. So that is important. Like I said, very few food sources, but dairy products tend to be fortified with it. So there's that, and then also uh, I would say eggs. There are some eggs that will have a source like some vitamin D in there too. But yeah, supplementation is important for there. Um, Another thing for iron, gut health is important.
Mhm.
So if you don't
Okay.
have good nutrient absorption, doesn't matter how much supplementation you're taking, doesn't matter how many high iron foods you're taking. If you actually can't absorb it, it's not that helpful. Um,
Mm,
because of our gut health. It could be because we don't have the right balance of bacteria, or maybe we have low stomach acid, which we need stomach acid to break down and absorb iron and other minerals too. So gut health is a good place to start for iron. Again, knowing your levels and if it's necessary to supplement. And yeah, I would say getting it to the root of like, well, why is my iron low? Is it because I'm bleeding a lot? Why am I bleeding a lot? What's going on? And
right.
so
Correlation.
yes, digging more when it comes to iron too.
Okay. And I do kind of want to click back um to more of the PCOS and endometriosis because I know that you have a very personal story with endometriosis. What were your signs of having the condition and what were the steps that you had to take for, other women who are watching going through the same thing?
Yeah. So I had heavy periods from the very beginning since I was 12. I started my period at 11 and then like I guess my periods are regular at 12. But I always had heavy periods and I realized it like in high school. It took some time because we don't really talk about our periods, but I
Yeah.
realized I didn't actually have painful periods, so I didn't that wasn't a symptom that was on the forefront for me. Fast forward to when things got really bad though, like in 2020. Not only I actually had an IUD at that point, so my periods weren't necessarily heavy, but I noticed I started spotting.
Mm,
So I would bleed outside of when like my period was. And then I also developed pain. I started having cramping and painful periods, which was not normal for me. So then it'd be like a week out the month, I would have cramps. And then it became 2 weeks out the month. So like I still have like pelvic pain. Became 3 weeks out the month, 4 weeks out the month. So then it was like every day I always had pelvic pain. Um, Nauseous, digestive issues,
mm,
endobelly, the migraines, the chronic fatigue, the insomnia, sciatic pain, low back
wow.
pain, joint pain.
Everything.
Really walk at one point. Yeah.
Ooh.
Um, I ended up finding out that I had endometrioma on
Oh,
my which is like they call it a chocolate cyst. It's a cyst that's filled with blood on the
my
ovary,
goodness.
and it was large. And so that's when they're like, oh, you might have endometriosis. But I had already researched by that point because I was like, what's
You
going
already
on?
kind
So
of knew.
well, yes. So
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I have endometriosis. This is what I have. All these things like listed off the symptoms and all that stuff. But yeah, I ended up finding they found the cyst. From there, I spoke with a lot of specialists because we were trying to see if I had endo in like my bladder because I also developed like frequent urination, which is
Wow.
was not normal for me. Um, and then I also had oh yeah, with the gut issues and I also they suspected I may have bowel endometriosis.
Mm.
So I was like had a colonoscopy, seeing GI, seeing
Wow,
the
you're doing a lot.
yeah, and eventually I ended up getting excision surgery, and that's when they diagnosed me.
Okay, wow, you've been through a lot.
We all have. I mean,
Yes, yes.
unfortunately, the story of
Yes,
endo
girlhood.
with a chronic condition.
Mhm. Well, you are like you said, Indo warrior. So,
Thank you.
yes. But I think you mentioned cis and I also talk about it more in the article that a lot of Black women were often there's a statistics that 80% of us will experience some type of fibroids. And
hmm
that's also directly linked to how our periods are.
Hmm.
So, what are some things? Because I think this is a layered question, and I'm going to try to break it down as much as I can. That there is a lot of things that are marketed towards Black women, whether it's our hair care or, braiding hair. I think that's, they found out that there were carcinogens in the braiding hair that we use, perms. All these things that are marketed towards Black women end up being resulted in some type of endocrine or hormonal um, effect on us. So, what should we do to reduce and minimize our risk of fibroids or other hormonal imbalances that we may occur?
Yeah. So one of them is actually it actually goes back to our vitamin D conversation, having good levels of vitamin D. So the more deficient you are of vitamin D, the higher risk you have of developing a fibroid.
Mm,
That's a big one. Also, inflammation is a big one that can help to promote the growth of fibroids. Inflammation, hormone imbalance. Those are so if you are able to um, address hormonal imbalance, you can actually help to either prevent a fibroid or prevent it from progressing, from growing into something really large. Stress is a big factor in that, and I believe that's in addition to what you said in terms of like the products that are marketed to us. I believe that stress is also one of the reasons why we have fibroids, why they grow so large, and why we get them so young, because we do get
and
them young.
there's also very, very good points because I think as Black women, just like I was talking about earlier, I think A, there's a lot of medical discrimination.
Yeah,
And B, I think as Black women, we hold the stress of the world on us. I think I hate the phrase that independent Black women, but a lot of us, we feel that way. And
yeah.
we shouldn't have to go through life constantly in flight or flight mode. And I really do, just as the women in my family, my friends, that we don't have to go through life constantly, you know, being stressed. It's okay to take a break, you
Yeah.
know? So I think that really does um deal with so much of our hormonal regulation.
Mhm.
Um, so we have to tell other Black women to get vitamin D, exercise, and girl, take a break. It's okay to get some rest, you know?
Take a nap, step back, take a walk, change your job, do whatever you got to do, but like you have to preserve yourself. We're all we got.
Yes, we're all that we have. Um, before we face off the interview and end, what is the biggest thing that women need to know about their bodies that you want every woman who is watching this to understand and to know when is something wrong, when should I seek help, how should I prioritize any hormonal imbalances, that I may have?
Yeah. I want women to know that they actually have a lot of information already. Our body gives us data every single day, if you're paying attention. So I always recommend people to not just track your period. I know a lot of people are like, okay, I know when my period starts, know when it ends, but like, no, 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 no. Our menstrual cycle is a cycle. It's not just when you're bleeding. It is
Mm,
period to period. That is a cycle. And there's different things that happen throughout the course of that cycle. And it's really important that you are paying attention to a variety of things. So, like what your energy levels are, what your mood is, how you're digesting, what your stress levels are, your sleep, like getting a nice picture of how you feel on a daily basis because you can see patterns. And if something were off, you would be able to actually see it. It wouldn't be like, oh, I kind of seem like something's off, but I'm not really sure. But if you're looking back, you can see,
you
oh
can
no, this thing is
pinpoint.
off
You
this
can
way.
pinpoint.
Exactly. And you could take this same data to your provider, and providers like data.
Yes.
they want to see what's actually going on. They want to see patterns as well. So not only will you recognize it, but you'll help someone be able to help you. So know that be empowered, feel empowered that you have so much data in your own body and you're your own expert. And
Hmm.
as providers, we just want to partner with you.
You know your body better than anyone. So we have to understand the signs and really it's more than just tracking your period on an app, you know. I'm guilty of it, but but really how heavy are my periods? How
Mhm.
am I feeling? Should I feel this way any longer? So it's really the little things. You
Yeah.
know, we should listen to our bodies. And quickly, I forgot to mention about PCOS in general. A lot of women go through PCOS. So, what are some signs and how should we reverse any symptoms, whether it's facial hair, weight gain, or, feeling fatigued?
Oh, yes, those are big signs that you mentioned. On top of that, periods that are irregular. So a lot of times people with PCOS, they may have a period come every 40 days, or then it's maybe every 20 days. Like it could be very, very sporadic of when a period happens. So those are some signs that can give you an idea that maybe you have PCOS and want to get checked out. Um, so a big thing is a lot of people with PCOS have insulin resistance.
Mm,
Really important that people, and not all, but about 70% of people with PCOS, so almost all, most of
yeah,
them. So it's really important that they're balancing their blood sugars, having enough protein with every single meal, not skipping that,
protein.
having regular eating at regular intervals, like between every, we'll say like 4 to 5 hours is good. So that
Okay.
you're able to maintain blood sugars, get some movement in, relieve your stress, get enough sleep. Those are some key things that could be helpful with balancing your blood sugars too. But that's very, very important for people with PCOS. And those things can reverse. So I work with people where they're no longer growing hair on their face because their blood sugars are balanced. Because when our insulin is high, our ovaries produce more testosterone. That's why
Mm,
becomes.
very simple, but also, doing what we need to do. So, getting a routine, working out, eating right, all those things matter. All right.
Exactly.
And my one last question, and I tell this to all my interviews, what is the best piece of advice you ever received? It could be related to your field or just any advice that you ever received.
Ooh. And something that always stands out to me um is it Maya Angelou? I think it's Maya Angelou.
I I know exactly where you're heading.
Yeah. When and I feel like I'm gonna misquote this one, but when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first
First
time.
time. That is also one of my favorite quotes by Maya Angelou. So, but we are wrapping this up, wrapping this interview. Thank you again, Alexis, for coming on and giving us some great tips. Um, this is all the social platforms where you can see Miss Alexis Brooks. Please follow her and please read up on our interview. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.